Hi, welcome back to PÖFF TV. My name is Johanna Kristina and we're here right in the heart of the Black Nights Film Festival. Today we have an amazing guest joining us, the talented director from Canada. And the film is This Too Shall Pass. So, let's give a big welcome to our guest, Rob Grant.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Happy to be here.
Really good. So, beyond the obvious influences, which 80s films inspired you in the making of this film?
I mean, the go-to inspirations would definitely be Stand By Me or Dazed and Confused. Breakfast Club, I started to look at a lot more just because I like groups of teenagers interacting and talking and bantering back and forth, and that movie is just them doing that for an hour and a half. And then I'd say Anything with John Cusack. I mean, I think everyone kind of knows the holding the boombox above your head visual, and I kind of used that as my inspiration for these teenagers wanting to have their dare to be great moment.
Okay, but what draws you to this era?
It's a nostalgia thing for sure. I mean, I was born in '84, so my actual memory of the '80s is kind of quite limited. But there's something about no cell phones and teenagers interacting, and it's just kind of a different way where you can kind of get in trouble, and no one's really going to find out about it. There's something very nostalgic and beautiful about that, because I grew up without a cell phone, and I got in a lot of trouble myself that my parents didn't find out about, thankfully. And I feel like there's a lot more self-discovery kind of in that time period there.
So I wanted to ask, like, what inspired you to make this movie? Was it like something personal or some event, but this era?
Yeah, no, well, one of my producers, Michael Baker, was who the lead character is based on. He approached me to write it during the pandemic when no one was shooting anything. I was like, I went to my manager and said, find me something I can start writing. And he found me Michael Baker, and he's a former Mormon who kind of rebelled from the church and at 16 went on this adventure in Canada. And he came to me and he's like, do you think you could write? I have all these little stories and tidbits. And so at first I kind of didn't know how I was going to bring my myself into this movie until I started thinking about, me at 15. And then my dad was actually at the time dying from cancer, and I was having all these conversations with him about regrets or things that he didn't do, and I started thinking about, I really have always wanted to make my version of Stand By Me. And so,
that's so cool.
Yeah. So while I was writing it was originally a lot more cynical, but around that time, everyone's stuck at home. My father was dying of cancer. I started to find this much more like positive, uplifting story as I went along, and so it ended up becoming this like kind of ode to finding yourself and conflicts with your parents and still finding middle ground and happiness in between. So
okay, so the story is like pretty personal.
Very personal, yeah. I mean, aside from the producers, Michael, who a lot of the stories are based on, a bunch of the stories are from my childhood too. I was arrested at 15, so I put
really?
for vandalism and criminal mischief.
Oh.
Stupid teenage stuff. But like a bunch of my stories from when I got brought in, I put in. There's I just kept finding more and more in common of stories that I had gone through in my youth that kind of shaped me as an adult.
Yeah.
That I felt were worth putting in there. So
Totally, yeah. Okay. But John Hughes films are widely loved across generations. What do you think makes his work so enduring and still relevant?
Yeah, that's a tough one because he was so prolific. He was constantly writing, I mean, he even wrote Home Alone, which everyone is aware, but and that's about an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
But he's got something about teenage angst and the way that he doesn't treat those characters as kids. They're kind of fully formed adults, just in smaller bodies. Yeah. They're worried about the same things that adults are worried about. It's bigger picture stuff. It's not just who's got a crush on who. It's kind of they're all having these big existential life fears. And I just thought as a 16-year-old when I started to write about this teenager who rebels from the church and tries to find some autonomy and find himself. I just thought John Hughes kind of was doing that, and I just needed to pull a bunch of that style. So
Okay.
I have the feeling that's why it's good for watching for teenagers and for adults.
Okay. But did you intentionally invert any outdated tropes in this film?
I mean, you can't start writing them or make fun of them or tease them without knowing all of the original tropes. That's for sure. I don't think I set out to intentionally invert them. What I did set out to do was have the lead character want his life to be like those movies, but realizing that in reality that just isn't. It's either not going to work or it's going to blow up spectacularly in his face. And I think I was guilty of that too in my younger years. It's like, oh, why is my life not like these grand moments in movies? Why do I have a boring life? Let's make it more interesting. Oh wait, nope. Now I'm in jail, or now I'm in prison, now I'm getting arrested. Like, yeah, there's something dangerous about trying to get to that height.
Yeah. Okay. But this film addresses limitations imposed by strict family and religious values. Could the film's true sufferers be the family members of the main character, whose strict Mormon lifestyle restricts even healthy pursuits like sports?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a strict Catholic household, so I kind of used my Catholic guilt to kind of tackle the Mormon upbringing. I got lots of stories from Michael about what it was like. I tried my very best to not make it an attack on religion in general, because I think there's a lot of great things that can come out of that structure. So it was very important to me that it was less about attacking those rules, the weird rules, and more about you kind of need to separate yourself to find the autonomy and who you really are before you can go back and say, do I want to participate in this stuff or not? So for me, they're all kind of what's the word? What was the word you used? Sorry. Who's the victims? I think you said something.
Oh,
like
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they're all kind of victims in the sense that I think everyone needs the opportunity to find out who they are before subscribing to these doctrines.
Okay. But what was the biggest challenge when making this film?
It's always money.
Always, yeah.
Yeah, budgets are always never enough. We shot in Calgary, Alberta, which is the next province over from where I live in Vancouver, BC, which is great because they have really good tax breaks and crews. It was a really smooth shoot. I'm trying to think. The only hard part I would say is this was right before the U.S. Union decided to go on strike for all the actors. So the whole time we're shooting, it kept looming closer and closer, the strike deadline. We kept having to reach out to our union reps and be like, hey, are we under this banner? But because we were in a low-budget agreement, we technically didn't count. But the actors were then put in a strange spot where, we need to support our union. So it ended up being a pretty gray area there. That was probably the most difficult because that strike hit 2 days before we were supposed to wrap shoot. So we actually had to pause for a half day, figure out what the rules are, make sure no one was getting in trouble, and then we kind of restarted and luckily got the rest of the movie done.
But you got done.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
But the chemistry among the friends in the film feels really authentic.
Thank you.
So how did the cast members bond on set, and were there any memorable moments during filming?
The other producer, Michael Peterson, is a director himself. So what's great about that is he's not just trying to save money everywhere. So he actually put it into the budget that we'd fly all of the kids out a week early, and we just got to sit in a room and do rehearsals with the 5 leads. So for a full week before we even started, we ran the script every day. We talked about different things, and they started to become friends before we even got to set. Or at least we're familiar with each other's traits and abilities, so that by the time we got to set, there was a rapport, and I think that's what kind of helps the
totally.
feeling of them
it's
knowing
like a
each other.
great value to have,
which is not something you get a lot on an indie because there's not usually enough money for an extra week of rehearsals.
So that's a good idea. Also, like where to put the money. Maybe this is like. When you want to have a good film, then you maybe have to do it.
I'm sure we saved countless hours on set because we had already knew what we were all going to do by the time we got there.
Okay, but what message or takeaway do you hope young audiences find in this film? Or even older audiences, it doesn't matter.
It's funny because when I wrote it and I handed it off to my producers, I was like, I don't know what this is. I think it's going to be interesting, different take on, teenage self-discovery. And then even while I was editing it, I still kind of hadn't figured it quite out yet. And then once we started to do some test screenings and stuff like that, I started to figure out that the older audiences were getting very emotional with the idea that we had captured a period in their life that kind of doesn't exist anymore. And the younger audiences seem to just gravitate toward, I think they also gravitate towards the idea. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this was what our youth was like right now as well?
Yeah, nowadays, like...
So there's I think the message that came out of it was, it's kind of nice to have this time in your life when you can experiment, try things, do stupid stuff, learn about it, and not kind of have the world find out about it.
Do you wish that we don't have any cell phones right now also?
I do. I'm not, I don't have any social media. I'm not big on any of that stuff. I'm kind of very old-fashioned in that way. I'm also a very private person. Mm-hmm. So a part of me is, I just wish that for teenagers who are still trying to figure themselves out, I wish that they didn't have to broadcast that constantly while they're figuring it out.
Yeah, totally.
Because the person you are at 15, not the person I was at 20, not the person I am at 40 now. It's
and you're already sharing with the world.
The world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a part of me wishes that they had the opportunity to learn and fail, not on camera.
Okay, that's some good thoughts. So we've uncovered so many details about this story and about this film. So huge thanks to you for coming here, and it was really nice to meet you.
You as well, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for tuning in to PÖFF TV. I hope to see you here again, so catch you later. Bye.